Happy Labor Day, everybody. And for those of you not in the United States that don't know what Labor Day is, neither do most Americans. It's a holiday that was created to celebrate labor movements, and I have to look it up every year because I forget. Now it's just kind of like the end of summer. Like we have Memorial Day at the end of May, and we have Labor Day at the beginning of September, and it kind of indicates the end of summer. But based on the temperatures this week, you would not think it's the end of summer. It's gonna be like 95 degrees today, which is hot. It's hot for July, let alone September. September's supposed to be 70. So, why are we here in my garden today? We're here to look at and remember the life of my big red tomato plant. It has died, mostly, and the reason is a clogged feeder tube. The feeder tube clogged when I was out of town, and my caretaker was unable to remove the clog, and since it was September, we decided to let the plant go. There's only a couple more weeks left in the growing season, and it was just time. Plus, those tomatoes on that plant are no good. Like, they're just no good. If you haven't seen my taste testing video, where I tasted all these different tomatoes that I've been growing, those were no good. I started growing them because it seemed super interesting. Like, I wanted to try growing hydroponic tomatoes. I've seen people have great success with it, and I've had mixed success with my soil tomatoes. So I wanted to try it, and try it I did. And I would definitely recommend it to anybody growing tomatoes that doesn't have soil. Grow them in the Dutch buckets, it works great. But these things were just high maintenance. So let's take a look at these plants, and I'll give you my final thoughts on growing tomatoes in Dutch buckets. Here is the big red tomato plant. It's mostly dead because of the clogged feeder tube. Somehow it's still getting some water, somehow it's still alive, I don't know. But I didn't even bother picking these tomatoes because they're just no good. And most of them have blossom end rot, which was another frustrating thing for me because I didn't think that hydroponic tomatoes could get the blossom end rot. And I have another video where I talk about the blossom end rot that is in the works. I'll post that shortly. So my final thoughts on these Dutch bucket tomatoes is that they grew great. Like, these tomato plants are very robust tomato plants. There were a few problems, like I had a vine break over here. I had to tie them up. I had to prune them. You know, no more maintenance than a regular tomato plant you would do. But in addition to that maintenance, I had to make sure they had water every day. I had to make sure they had the fertilizer every day. And because I don't have an automated system to do that, I had to come out here and mix that up every day. And if I was out of town, I had to have somebody else do it for me. These right here, by the way, are fantastic tomatoes. I will grow these again, just not in a Dutch bucket. I have a 12-gallon reservoir down here, right there, which is not big enough for these two plants. So if you don't have soil, or you just want to try growing in Dutch buckets like I did, then make sure that you have a reservoir that's big enough, because 12 was not big enough. I had to fill it up every day. If you went like 2 full days, that thing would run dry, and these things would suffer. They would wilt, or I think that might have been part of the problem with the blossom end rot, the heat and the inconsistent watering, because it would dry up so fast. Anyway, will I be growing in Dutch buckets again? No. Not unless I don't have soil. And the reason is, they're just so much work. Like, you have to make sure they have water every day, fertilizer every day. If you go out of town, you have to measure the fertilizer for whoever's taking care of the tomatoes if you don't have some sort of automatic system. I had to make sure that the drain pipes weren't clogged. I had to make sure the feeder tubes weren't clogged. I had to make sure that the roots weren't binding up in the drainage system. I had to make sure there wasn't dirt getting sucked into the pump. My pump went out mid-season because it got too much calcium buildup, and I had to get a new pump. Just a lot of work, especially for two plants. Now, if you were to scale this to 12, 20 plants or whatever, however many you wanted to grow, I could see the benefit there. I could see why people do it in warehouses, right? Because it's clean. There's lots of benefits to doing it this way. But just not for me if I also have soil, like literally right over there. Can you see that? Right over there? Right over there. It's just not worth it for me. My final conclusion, and I know I've said that like 3 times, if you have soil, grow in soil. If you don't have soil, by all means, grow in the Dutch buckets. They work great. Just make sure you have the available time and energy to put towards them, as they will need it. So I will see you in another video, and happy Labor Day.